warmly welcome the Executive Vice President Henna Virkkunen for being here today. For us, it is pivotal to have a debate on the subject matters of your mandate, such as technological sovereignty, security, democracy, and digital technologies. Indeed, they are pivotal issues, on the one hand, to protect the liberal democracy model and the values underpinning the European integration process. On the other hand, these issues are key for essential sectors to relaunch European competitiveness within the framework of the digital transition. The Constitutional Affairs Committee that I'm honored to lead has repeatedly dealt with the European initiatives on these fronts. But before giving the floor to you, Madam Vice President, I would like to raise some points we deem particularly pivotal. First of all, the procedures used by the European Union to assess how national legislation abides by the rule of law. We are under the impression that the rule of law is indeed interpreted, especially within the framework of the Commission annual report, in a wider sense, which means questioning political and legislative choices which fall under the remit of national parliaments and other national institutions. Indeed, the report places on the same level the institution's critical positions, as well as instrumental claims made by stakeholders and sector-specific interests on each and every reform impacting the sphere of action. We believe that the alignment of complex legislative reforms, such as the current justice reforms in Italy, with rule of law cannot be ascertained based on abstract paradigms, confrontational or scaremongering stances. We must be profoundly aware of the checks and balances of each and every country, and we also have to be aware of the functioning of democratic institutions, and in all democracies, this is up to parliaments. We have, however, really appreciated the Rule of Law report for 2025, which was submitted tabled last week, and in some aspects, progress has been made, especially the draft law on lobbying that we are currently examining within the Constitutional Affairs Committee. Number two, internal security and the effective protection of external borders. Against this backdrop, we would like to flesh out the issue of cooperation between European Union agencies and national law enforcement agencies to prevent and combat transnational crime. This morning, I visited the headquarters of the National Migration Bureau and the border police of our Ministry of the Interior that is led by Prefect Claudio Galzerano. In their control room, we have taken note of the information acquired within the monitoring of external frontiers, and this makes it even more severe, something that we have become aware within the study visits at Europol and Frontex. As I said, it is weird that it's been 2 years that the systematic exchange of personal data among these two agencies has come to a halt. That is to say, Europol and Frontex, as for those who have committed serious crimes connected to migration. And this is a consequence of two opinions made by the personal data ombudsman. And this jeopardizes the fight against crime at the external border. So we would like to have your stance on this. Finally, to conclude, I would like to comment on the goal to reinforce a European digital sovereignty and public infrastructure in this sector, which is also key to consolidate citizens' trust in institutions while simplifying businesses' lives, thereby increasing and reinforcing competitiveness. Finally, I would also recall a visit that I carried out yesterday at the control room and the data center of the SOGEI, the Society of the Ministry of Economic and Finance, which is indeed an excellent example of digital transition in Italy. I would like to ask whether the European Commission intends to tap into the role of this public stakeholders when it comes to the relevant European Commission strategy. I would therefore give the floor to Vice President Virkkunen, and after her initial remarks, and I'm asking you to stick to the 20-minute time allotted to you, we will hear from deputies and senators for specific questions and observations. I would like to recall you that there are 10 minutes allotted for each parliamentary group. Ideally, each speech, five minutes for each speech for deputies and senators, and then we will have replies. For those who haven't done yet, I would like to invite them to include their names in the list of speakers. I would like to ask you to stick to the timeline allotted to each and every one of us, and then we will have the replies. And without further ado, I'll give the floor to Vice President Henna Virkkunen. Over to you, Madam.
Thank you so much, Honourable Chair, honourable members of Parliament. It's a great pleasure to be here in this afternoon in this, I think, very amazing building and room where we are. Personally, I have a background as a member of Parliament, and also I was 7 years member of National Parliament in Finland, and then I was also 10 years member of European Parliament. So that's why I very much respect the work of the elected members of Parliament, and I'm very happy that I have now this possibility to meet you and hear your priorities and answer also your questions when it comes to Italy and European Union. So it's a great honor to be here today with you. And we know that we are living in very, very challenging times when we speak about Europe, and especially my portfolio, which is combining technology, security and democracy. We see that nowadays these three topics, they are very much interlinked. So, of course, technology is very important for our security and democracy, but it can be also used against us. And we are very much under attack also in the European Union. So we have seen that our critical infrastructure has been sabotaged. We are facing massive cyber attacks also, and also our democratic processes are often under attack. So it's very important that we are supporting our security, our competitiveness, and our democracy. And these are very clear priorities for the European Commission. And Italy, with its economic strength, its scientific and industrial leadership, of course, plays a very key role in this European project. We know when we look at the technologies that far too long Europe has underinvested in strategic digital technologies, which are very important nowadays. And it's the very foundation of our competitiveness and also for our security. And while our global competitors, when we speak about technologies, they race ahead, we still face productivity and innovation gaps in the European Union, and we are often too dependent on non-European suppliers. And these are the challenges that can no longer be ignored. Now the European Commission wants to change this course, and together we are moving with determination with our competitiveness compass, very much based on Professor Draghi's report. Determination to simplify also our laws and regulations. We want to make sure Europe faster and simpler for the businesses, for industry and SMEs, and also supported by a renewed multi-annual financial framework, which we adopted yesterday, our proposal on that. So we are already making progress, and let me highlight some examples. Well, especially when it comes to technologies. Of course, one of the key technologies nowadays is artificial intelligence. We are expecting that it will change very much our societies and industrial life in the coming years. And we are working very decisively to make Europe an AI continent. In April, we launched the AI Continent Action Plan. And developing our AI capabilities starts with AI data and also computing infrastructure. So that is something that we are now investing together with our member states, to infrastructure and also to data to develop AI. That's where technological breakthroughs and future growth will come. So we see that we need to act so that it becomes attracting also to invest in Europe and to hire workforce in Europe when it comes to AI. So we need to revert the trend where qualified professionals and also intellectual property or simply the investment savings of our citizens are going to the other countries. With this in mind, we are now rolling out 13 AI factories across Europe, and one of them is in Bologna, our Leonardo, based to our Leonardo. So we are giving researchers and businesses the computing power they need. So this is a very important part of our AI Continent Action Plan, to invest to infrastructure, because we have very strong research community also in Italy when it comes to artificial intelligence, and also we have thousands of startups in Europe, many of them based in Italy, who are developing AI, but they don't have access to computing capacity. And that's why it's important that we are now together with member states investing to that, to give access to computing capacity and to develop AI. And we will not stop here, because we will launch up also to 5 AI gigafactories, each with the tens of thousands of state-of-the-art AI chips. So 4 times more powerful supercomputers than AI factories. And these AI gigafactories, they will power the next wave of frontier AI models in areas such as healthcare, robotics and scientific discovery. We received an overwhelming response for the first call for expression of interest for building AI gigafactories, which closed just a few weeks ago. I want to highlight that 3 proposals that Italy was submitting to this call. So it was a great success, and it was going beyond our expectations. And it also shows the excellence that you have in this country when it comes to computing infrastructure and the interest on AI. It shows also the ability of Italian industry and also public sector and research to come together to build an economy of the future. Of course, this infrastructure is only the beginning, because the data union strategy, which is coming later in this year, will also ensure unfettered access to high-quality public and private data to fuel for our ecosystem. And we also need to focus to uptake on AI solutions across the European market. In last year, only 13% of the European enterprises were using AI, so this must change. And we see that in Italy, it was even lower. It was under the average how much the industry and businesses, and especially SMEs, how they were using AI. So it's very important that we are now identifying that where are the gaps and how we can support our SMEs and public sector and industry to uptake AI. And that's why we are now preparing our Apply AI strategy to accelerate the adoption across very vital sectors, because we see that Europe can be very strong when we are bringing together our traditional industries, our SMEs and AI developers, because we can build very much the productivity of our companies with AI and new technologies, and of course we are able also to have new services and products. So I want also to mention the importance of ensuring a simple and innovation-friendly implementation of the AI Act. I trust that Italy will reflect this when you are now doing your implementation on this law. At the same time, our Cloud and AI Development Act will also expand Europe's data center capacity with a very strong focus on sustainability and security. And this is another area where Italy's industrial strengths and digital ambition can make a difference. So we are now planning to publish during the autumn a specific Cloud and AI Development Act to really boost investments in this sector, and also to invest to European alternatives when it comes to cloud cloud capacity, and also make sure that we have very efficient and sustainable data centers in the European Union. And of course, another critical area is also semiconductors, the chips that power everything from cars to medical devices. And we see that we can't be strong in technologies, we can't have technological sovereignty if we are not also strong when it comes to semiconductors and chips, because this is very much precondition for any other technologies. Thanks to European Chips Act, over 80 billion euros in investments have already been announced. And Italy has been a driver also in this progress, because your national strategy, your flagship company ST Microelectronics, and the planned wide bandgap pilot line in Catania, co-funded by the Chips Act, show the way forward. But here as well, we must stay ahead of the curve, and that is why we are now preparing a Chips Act 2.0 to boost next generation areas like AI chips also, and photonics, quantum and energy efficient architectures here. So, honourable members of the Parliament, also along with technology, we see that the security, of course, is the foundation of our sovereignty. And earlier this year, the Commission has been adopting a white paper for European defence and the Rearm Europe plan, Readiness 2030. And this is about investing in our industrial base, fostering our cross-border cooperation and making sure Europe can protect its citizens. And I see that this is also very good news for our technological sovereignty when all our member states, they are planning to invest heavily to defense and security, because we see that the technologies are going very much hand in hand with the defense and security investments. And if we want to have very competitive defense industry, of course we have to invest to new technologies, critical technologies, to AI, quantum, and also to chips sector. Italy, as a founding EU member and pillar of NATO, has unique expertise and capabilities to contribute to this very shared security effort as well. But none of these ambitions can succeed if our businesses, regions and citizens, they are burdened with too much unnecessary regulation. Already, we have delivered 6 so-called digital omnibuses, simplification packages, which are legislative proposals meant to simplify certain European regulations by cutting red tape, harmonizing the rules and streamlining implementation across our member states. Later this year, we will also present our first dedicated digital simplification package with 2 key actions. First, digital omnibus to amend existing legislation on cybersecurity, data sharing and AI. So we are looking to overlapping parts there, how to simplify this for the businesses and making it easier and less costly also to businesses to comply with these rules. And also we are proposing a European business wallet so that companies, especially our SMEs, that they can handle their administrative obligations more efficiently. So it's important also to use digital tools more to simplify the processes. I think it's important also to underline that when we speak about simplification, it doesn't mean that we are deregulating, that we are like rolling out, rolling down, or taking back steps when it comes to our rules, because our policy goal stays as they are, but we can reach them in a smarter and more cheaper and more effective way. So we have often too much bureaucracy and administrative burden around our rules. Before the end of this year, we will also present our Digital Networks Act. So we are not planning to have very much new legislation when it comes to digitalization, because we see that during the last years we have been adopting big package of digital rules, and now we are implementing them, enforcing them, looking how we can simplify. We are looking also to overlapping parts there. But Digital Networks Act is something that we are now reviewing and modernizing our telecoms rules. And we know, of course, that the telecom sector and the connectivity is very much basis for all the innovations. So especially we want to incentivize investments in next generation infrastructure and also reduce administrative burden and compliance costs also for the operators in this sector. So, honourable members of the Parliament, we are facing a very decisive decade. The choices we are making today will determine Europe's place in the world tomorrow. We see that the competition is very hard when it comes to technologies, and those countries who are having the capacities in the critical technologies, they are very much leading the world in the future. That's why it's important that Europe is now building up our own capacity in critical sectors. So now the new European Competitiveness Fund we were proposing yesterday, based very much to Draghi report, part of the Commission proposal for the new EU budget, is our main investment to deliver digital leadership, and Italy must be fully part of this very important effort. Your role as national legislators is extremely important to deliver on these goals. You are very close to your citizens in Italy, also with the businesses here, the regions, so you know what works on the ground here. Together we can strengthen Europe's position in the world as a union that invests in technology, defends our values, and also delivers concrete benefits for all our people. I count very much to your support as a key partner to make this a success. So thank you very much for this opportunity to be in this afternoon together with you, and now I'm very much looking forward to hear your questions and your priorities and your input.
Grazie, Vicepresidente.
Thank you, Madam Vice President Virkkunen. Yeah, a round of applause, please. Now, before leaving the floor to the honourable MPs, I would like to leave the floor to the MP Giovedì, who chairs the EU committee, and then I will leave the floor to Chairman Giulio Terzi. Please, the floor is yours. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Once again, I would like to extend a warm welcome to Madam Virkkunen. Three very brief questions. AI, as we know, is an important tool to incentivize, to boost European competitiveness. The AI Act, however, risks stopping the EU from making progress in this aspect, while other countries are adopting more flexible tools. We're talking most importantly about timing of implementation on the 2nd of August and on the 2nd of February 2026. Over the next few months, there will be new rules that will be implemented. In light of the above, my question is the Commission considering amending the AI Act through the Omnibus in order to simplify it? And is it possible for there to be a stop and clock so that the entry into force of the obligations, especially the ones on the 2nd of August, can be put off, can be postponed, as many European companies and Italian startups have demanded, because they have expressed many concerns concerning the timing and sustainability. Also, when it comes to digitalization, and if we consider this aspect on a broader perspective, there is an hypothesis about using EU regulations in a digital sector as a way for economically punishing the US for their tariffs. The US sees EU acts or digital acts or digital legislation as a kind of discrimination against US corporations. We are at the moment when the EU must invest to increase its competitiveness. So these regulations may actually hinder the growth of our own market and may punish EU companies and investors. So could you please clarify whether digital regulations and acts have been discussed with the EU, with the US? Does the Commission want to move in this regard in a constructive way without turning it into a new source of tensions? This aspect aspect, by contrast, may represent a source of de-escalation in talking with the US and may push towards may push the EU market towards competitiveness. So security, white paper, rearm Europe, the East Front, cyber security, Italy. Stresses, of course, focuses on the south flank, illegal migration, social problems, terrorism. Here in Rome, we wanted to reiterate that illegal migration from the south especially raises our concern perhaps even more than the Russia-Ukraine conflict, therefore the Eastern Front. Thank you, Mr. Ginoviglia. Now I'll leave the floor to President Terzi Santagata. Please, over to you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Madam Vice President, for your briefing. I would like to touch on a couple of aspects that you have pointed out to. How do you, in particular, I would like to ask for your assessment over the rule of law report that you presented last February in Strasbourg. When it comes to the first point, foreign interference and the strategies to disseminate disinformation and interference, and sometimes even direct attacks, as we saw over the last couple of days, against our institutions and countries in order to subvert democracy. Yeah, when we talk about interference, we're talking about a network of agents, of complicit actors that support the Russian regime and also the Chinese and the Iranian regimes. These actors are present in Europe as well. So disinformation and manipulation techniques they undermine our stability. As we saw over the last 2 or 3 days, there are some networks of hackers that operate from within our territory. About 20 to 25 agents that have been operating over the last few months against our administrations, thanks to a Russian-made software that uses a not very complicated system, a DDoS, denial of service, and they are rewarded through cryptocurrency for their operations. So it's quite difficult to differentiate between these two aspects. Also, when it comes to searching for intelligence information and mining the way our countries work. When it comes to the rule of law, I would like to say I would like to talk about the justice system and how to make justice more efficient in our countries so that our countries are more business friendly and attract more investment and raise competitiveness. Based on the assessment that our partner countries in Europe and outside Europe make, there has been some progress that the Commission acknowledges when it comes to the time, the duration of civil trials. But there's much more that is left to do. However, we have achieved some results that we will continue, that we would like to continue sharing, and we would like to be supported by the Commission. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Senator Giulio Terzi Santagata. Now, I will leave the floor to the questions by senators and members of the Chamber of Deputies from the different parliamentary groups. Each parliamentary group will have 10 minutes. First of all, MP Amic from Brothers of Italy Party. Thank you, Mr. President. A very warm welcome to the Executive Vice President. We are very much honored to have you with us today. Thank you for your precise briefing. Thank you very much indeed. First of all, I would like to go back to what Mr. Vigna has already said. We all hope that there will be negotiations. Actually, the negotiations will be successful between the EU and the US. As our Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni recently said, it would be useless for there to be a fight between the US and the EU. We all work towards reaching a fair agreement that favors the West as a whole. Over the last 5 years, the EU has adopted important regulations that we have dealt with in our respective committees over digitization, for example, DMA and AI Act. They have a significant impact on our lives and on our corporations and also on US corporations. The Trump administration has always said clearly that it deems technological corporations as strategic assets, and the US administration sees EU legislation as a sort of implicit tariffs. An example, over the last period, for example, the Farmers Act, these marketing tools are useful to Italian and European companies that generate hundreds of billions each and every year. So my question is, any amendment or any change in these rules or the formulation of these rules, are they under consideration in order to facilitate digital markets, in order to ease tensions and reach a de-escalation with the US? Thank you. Now, we will listen to the other questions, and then finally we will leave the floor to the Executive Vice President. The next four questions actually will be from MP Madia, sorry, I'm sorry. I don't know why I said this name actually. Got the name wrong. I'm very sorry. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Madam Vice President. I have a very specific question concerning the important job you have been carrying out over the way we can ascertain users' age on social networks. In your view, how long will it take to implement this important reform, which I am very much proud of? I'm very happy that the Commission has been playing such an important role in this regard. I know that you are convinced that this is a necessity. However, I believe that the time necessary for implementing it plays a key role. We have to ascertain a user's age. Otherwise, we cannot introduce a minimum age to use the internet and social networks. Without ascertaining users' age, we cannot implement most of the Digital Service Act, including in the important parts of this regulation that protect minors. For example, the Digital Service Act now doesn't allow the profiling of minors. Without this important reform, we cannot face a real social emergency. We cannot address a real social emergency. I'm talking about a social emergency when it comes to physical health, mental health of our minors, of our adolescents, of our minors. John Haidt in the US and the report that was commissioned by the French government. There have been many sources over these issues. So the first tool is making sure of users' age. Undersecretary Butti didn't speak very much about the time required for experimentation. I think that we need to have an exact time window so that we can address this crisis or this challenge. the French president said to the Commission, if we don't do that, we are going to do that. Well, in my view, this is a mistake. This is a lose-lose approach. I think that member states and the Commission must work hand in hand. Now, I would like to hear in a clear way from you how long it's going to take to ascertain or to make sure of users' age. Thank you, Mrs. Madia. I will now leave the floor to all the remaining members of the Democratic Party Parliamentary Group. Please bear in mind the time allotted to you.
Very quickly, this is a very delicate moment, and we have to act wisely at the EU. We have to join forces now more than ever, and we must consider that if tomorrow Trump was to sign an executive order to stop the supply of digital services to Europe, then we would be in a blackout situation, and we would go back to several decades ago. When it comes to chips and semiconductors, AI, cloud, cybersecurity, autonomous driving, today in the US Senate, there was yet another controversial front opening up on this front. So against this backdrop, and hence my question, how are we gearing our EU processes in order to recoup the time that we have lost? How can we offer proprietary technologies to EU users? So when it comes to satellite backup services, if communications were to come to a halt and the bill on space in Italy introduced that, well, what is Europe's stance on this? How can we accelerate Europe's job on this so that Europe is able to defend itself? Senator from the Democratic Party, and then Senator De Luca. Thank you very much, Madam Vice President. I really appreciated your remarks and what you have told us. My question is indeed simple. We live in an ever-changing world, and even considering climate change, climate emergency, and security systems and infrastructure in general. As you know, in Europe we have many accidents because of insufficient maintenance of infrastructure, and therefore I believe technology could come in handy in this respect. We have been trying to reflect on the Internet of Things project, which was a very pivotal project in this regard. Well, I think this would have to be revived in light of AI-related tools, because this is how we can control European infrastructures, and this is how we can ramp up the quality of our infrastructures in order to avoid landslides, natural disasters, and so on and so forth. And therefore, my question is, do you think that Europe should invest in these priorities too? I mean, we must be able to identify and pinpoint priorities when it comes to EU funds. So we have to adopt priorities to save resources, among other things. Thank you very much for being so brief and concise. Last question by the Democratic Party representative, MP De Luca. Thank you, Chair. I would also like to thank the Vice President Virkkunen. I have a political consideration to make about Europe. Europe is not a parasite organization, as many claimed. This is an organization that was set up after the war to come up with a space of freedom, rights, and democracy. These values are now under threat, and they must be protected, most importantly in the digital space. Internet is indeed a pivotal tool that is part and parcel of our everyday life in the public and private spheres. However, it also comes with great challenges that must be averted. Chair Santagata referred to disinformation, hybrid threats coming from other continents. What is the strategy you are considering introducing to make sure that Europe is on par with the protection requirements coming from our democracies. We, as Democratic Party, have introduced a bill to affirm the need to come up with a digital identity against anonymity online. We have this is how we can avoid hate speech, online fake news, and other threats to our rights and our democracies. We would like to know your stance on this. We would be more than pleased to send you the text of the bill. Maybe we can act in cooperation so as to give Europe the possibility to come up with a comprehensive legislation to protect freedoms, rights, and democracies online. I would like to know whether you already have ideas on the pipeline for that. Let's move on to the five-star movement, and I'm giving the floor to MP Cafiero de Lau. Over to you. Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you very much, Madam Vice President, for your remarks. Based on Europol reports, organized crime represents an ever-sophisticated threat for the EU. We have transnational criminal groups that attack economies of the EU member states. So we need an integrated response, and within your remit, there is a reinforcement of internal security. We have to adopt a stricter approach to the fight against organized crime in the second half of 2026. So in the pipeline, there is the revision of the 841 decision of 2008 for the region of the fight against organized crime, especially for what concerns the definition of mafia-type association as per Article 416 bis in our penal code, and therefore each and every member state could in fact pursue individual criminal groups. So what is the Commission stance on the revision of this legislation? Rule of law and harmonization of regulations. Italy has recently eliminated the crime of abuse of office, but there's still a gap. In other countries, we still have such a crime. For us, this is a violation of international rules. So my question is, what do you think about this? The crime of abuse of position should be eliminated by all countries or not? Your remit also includes the reinforcement of digital competitiveness. You, Madam Vice President, and together with the Vice President for Industrial Strategy, so you too will be called upon to increase competitiveness and productivity with the rollout of new technologies. How do we protect competitiveness? We have to do away with biased positions and privileges, especially for other countries such as the US that have engaged in a trade war with us by imposing a 30% tariff on the EU. What can you say about digital platforms? How can we ensure that multinational companies can contribute fairly to the global economy? And last but not least, what can you say about the Euro digital? Since this is yet another, dossier the European Bank is working on. From the five-star movement, we still MP Ria. You have 5 minutes left for you to make your question. Over to you. Can you hear me? I would also like to thank Vice President for her remarks. Italy's delay when it comes to strategic infrastructures, fiber, and the evolution of the Italian digital system. Do you believe that the funds under the Recovery and Resilience Plan should be ascertained by an independent body in order to assess what are the reasons for this delay in Italy? On your report, you underlined the fact that we are lagging behind when it comes to the AI development. As a matter of fact, the only legislation on AI that is being discussed is not indeed compliant with the AI Act and the European legislation on the protection of personal data. I think this is something you should maybe raise in order to guide the Italian government and to lead it towards a reasonable stance for the future when it comes to AI. Now, a number of pessimistic questions were raised, outlooks when it comes to the interruption of services in the digital sphere. Do you have any information on this? And last but not least, a few years ago, we had some chance to be competitive when it came to semiconductors and chips in order to be able to be a partner on the same level as China and the US. But then what happened? Over the past few years, the situation has changed. We have been, in fact, backsliding on that. So what's your stance on this? And last but not least, the European Union is investing on the AI, on digital system, but I'm afraid that this would be, as a matter of fact, included in investments on defense. As a matter of fact, when it comes to technology and AI, this is not just about defense. This is also about businesses' competitiveness and the entitlement to live in a sound digital environment. Very last question, and then Vice President Virkkunen will have the occasion to reply. The Forza Italia representative. Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you very much, Madam Vice President, for seeing you here today, since we were colleagues at the European Parliament for the 8th Parliament. Thank you so very much for being here, Madam Vice President. It is so very important when it comes to the beginning of a new commission to take stock of the perspectives and sovereignty and technological sovereignty is indeed a hot issue, and therefore my question is, what can we do concretely when it comes to legislation and investments? In the 8th Parliament, I recall, there was 1.5 billion earmarked fund for artificial intelligence within the framework of the then multi-annual financial framework at the time, where other powers were investing in this dossier. So I want to know, what will the Commission do when it comes to regulation and investments? And do you also have a timeline for us to be able to achieve technological independence on a level playing field with other world actors? My other question is the strategic nature of security, which goes in hand with the DORA regulation, the Digital Operational and Resilience Act, which has to do with the financial sector. So for the sake of security, could we apply this to other industrial sectors too? Thank you very much, P. De Monte. I beg your pardon. Then there is one last question by Senator Della Porta, by the Brothers of Italy, Fratelli d'Italia group. Could you please make your question, could you please be concise? I'll be very short. I would like to thank Madam Vice President for the question. And my question is linked to a bill that was approved yesterday, infrastructure for data transmission. Yesterday, the Senate has approved a law on the security of submarine cables. Sabotaging attacks have been multiplying, and this is threatening our future. But this has also to do with our suppliers. The U.S. has just banned Chinese products in this regard. My question is, what can the EU do in this respect? So we've come to a conclusion of the question. So I hope there were not too many. Now, Madam Vice President, over to you for the replies. Thank you.
Thank you very much for all of you. I think very, very interesting and important topics you were raising here, and I try to combine them a little bit, but I try to answer so good what I can for all of this, even that some of them, of course, are very difficult questions also. So when it comes to our AI Act and is it hindering innovations, this is often, of course, said. And I see that regulation is not against innovations, because I think we should have that kind of rules which are encouraging innovations. But when we are speaking about that kind of new technology like AI, we have to be also aware of the risks. And I think we have a very good approach in the European Union, risk-based approach. So most of the cases we see that we can freely develop and use AI, and there is not risk. But when AI is used, for example, in the hospitals or in the transportation, when AI is deciding that who will get the bank loan, who will get the job, that kind of systems, they have to meet certain standards and they have to be tested before they are entering to the markets, because we see also that it's important that people can trust to technology. So it's good base for innovations and investments that people can trust when AI is running the hospital systems, that this is trustworthy system, and that's why we have the rules. So now the next phase on AI Act, it will come into the force now step by step. So the next part will come into the force now 2nd of August. It's the generative AI part, and there we have now code of practice. So the expert group in last week, they published their code of practice rules, and then we are now finalizing also guidelines for the AI developers. And I think this is important part, of course, which comes into force now 2nd of August, but the public enforcement of this part starts 1 year later. So in the way there is still this adoption phase for the companies. But the next very important part, of course, will be the critical or the high-risk systems, and this will come into the force on next year, August. And here we are now preparing standards, or the standardization organization. And of course this is now very important for our industries, that they have to know the standards of the higher risk applications before the legislation comes into the force. So now we are giving all our support for the standardization organization, that they can now finalize the standards, that our industry will know them in good time before the legislation applies to high-risk services in August 2026. So this is something that we are now discussing very much with the industries and standardization organization, because we also see that it's important that we are accelerating now the work. But I don't think that we should withdraw something or backslide with our AI rules, because they are risk-based rules. But in the same time, we are very committed to now implement them in a very innovation-friendly manner, and we want to support our SMEs and industry really to comply with the rules and also to use AI. And that's why we have an AI office also in the European Commission, and we will also open now in these days also a service desk especially for SMEs, to support our SMEs also to understand the rules and also to understand the possibilities of AI. Of course, it's not enough that we have one office in Brussels, and that's why we have these digital innovation hubs around in the European Union, in all the member states, and we are also now transforming them to support our SMEs on the ground with AI, because we see that it's very important. So I don't think that our regulation is hindering innovations, but in the same time we are also now looking our AI Act as a part of our simplification package, because there are some parts which are overlapping with, for example, with Digital Services Act. So we are simplifying the processes from the company's perspective, and of course there is also some other regulations, for example, medical device regulation or financial regulation, which are sometimes a little bit overlapping with AI Act from the company's perspective. So we are also looking at how we can make it easier for them to comply when there are several legislations touching the same issue. And when it comes to digital rules, and especially the relations with USA, many of you were mentioning this because, of course, it has been something very visible during the last months that there has been also a lot of criticism from the USA side to our digital rules, because often it seemed from the USA side that our rules are targeting USA companies. But of course, this is not the case, because we have same rules for everybody. So we have same rules for European companies, for Asian companies, from USA companies. So everybody who is doing business in the European Union has to respect our rules. And when it comes to Digital Markets Act, it's a legislation where we want to make sure that nobody isn't misusing their very dominant market position to block new innovations from the market. And for this legislation, we have also a lot of support from the USA companies. So those companies who are not the biggest in the world, of course, for them it's important to have access to markets and really level playing field and also competition. And this is important also for our European SMEs and for our industries, that the big global players are not blocking everything with their innovations. There has to be interoperability and also possibility for new players to come to the markets, because often the big companies, they are like gatekeepers on the markets. So our Digital Markets Act is made for that we want to make sure that we have level playing field and access to markets also for the smaller companies. So there's also a lot of support also from American companies for that, those who are not the biggest companies in the world. And then another legislation which has been very much in the discussions, in public discussions, it's the Digital Services Act. And it is something where we want to make sure that we have a democratic and safe and fair environment also when it comes to digital world. So very clear rule in the European Union is that everything is what is illegal in our societies, it's also illegal online. So illegal products or illegal content, it has to be taken down. And I think this is very fair for everybody, because it's the part that we want to create safe and democratic and fair environment also in digital world. And often we have seen that some of the critics, they see that this is limiting freedom of speech, but we have also very strong safeguards to freedom of speech in our Digital Service Act. So it's only that illegal content has to be taken down, but everything what is legal content can be on internet also from our side. So I think it's very clear and very fair from our side. So from our side, our digital rules are not part of the trade negotiations, because this is very important for our future and for our continent, that we can have competition and new innovations when it comes to digitalization, because otherwise, of course, it would harm very much our economy and new innovations if some countries are or some companies are having monopolies and we are not having tools to act in this case. And also when it comes to Digital Services Act, to make sure that illegal products are not sold in internet or illegal content is not spread in internet. It's something what is very, very important for us also in the future. And I think there is also a lot of understanding also in USA side for that, and especially when it comes to USA companies. So I would say that we have all the time, we are all the time working very closely with online platforms, of course, our technical team, our services, because we are now enforcing the legislation, and they understand, of course, that they have to comply with our rules, because European Union, it's the biggest external market for most of the USA digital companies. For some of the companies, European Union is the biggest market. So for example, for example, Instagram is having 100 million users more in the European Union than in USA. So of course they fully understand that they have to comply with our rules, and this is a very important market for them. In the same time, when all the companies are always defending, of course, their own business interests, because often it means when we are enforcing our rules that they have to change the design of the service, for example, to make sure that there is more transparency in the actions and also more competition, for example. And when it comes to illegal migration and about the different threats what the different member states face, I think we have to fully also acknowledge that, because it's true that our member states, they have different history, different geographic situation, and also they are facing different threats. And that's why I think it's very important that when it comes to migration, we have our common European rules, and we have also solidarity, that we are supporting each other, because because we know that some member states are very much more under pressure than others when it comes, for example, to illegal migration. And when it comes to defense and security, of course, also those countries who are neighbors for Russia, of course, they have now very much pressure and threat, direct threat from Russian side, more than those countries who are a little bit more far. And here is also, I think, important that we are standing together and we understand that different countries, they have different threats and we have to prepare together and support each other. Because anyway, in the end, we are all, of course, in the same situation together. So that's why I think it's very important to remember that we are facing different threats and we have to stand together. When it comes to rule of law report, this was now sixth year when the Commission was proposing the rule of law report, and of course the process has been also developing all the time. This was first time for this Commission when we were proposing and adopting rule of law report, and it started now a rule of law report cycle from our side. So in the coming weeks and the coming months, we are very willing to engage now with all the countries. We know that all the European countries, they got some recommendations again, what they should now develop. During the last 3-4 years, about 75% of the recommendations, they have been adopted in the member states. So we see that rule of law report is working, but of course we see that there's all the time coming, of course, new challenges we have to look. But this is a process where we want to work very closely with the member states and support the actions also, and understanding, of course, also the different cultures and situation of the different member states. And in this year, first time we were also adding this single market dimension to our rule of law report, because we see also that this is very important for businesses and investors, that they can trust also to rule of law of the country when they are making decisions if they are investing into certain country. So for example, we were looking at the justice system, that how efficient it is from the company's perspective, and also, for example, the public procurement, how transparent it is, for example, because it's important, of course, access to markets, and also, for example, protection of investments, that how it's working in different countries, because we see that in these times when there's so much uncertainty globally, Europe is seen as a very attractive place for investments and innovations, because we have, of course, we know that Europe is often seen that we are very bureaucratic and slow. It's often true. We want to change it. We want to be faster and smarter and simpler for the businesses. But in the same time, Europe is seen as a very stable place, because we have also predictability and we are a reliable place. And we see that especially we have to also look that our rule of law is working in the member states in that way that it's also attracting investors and businesses to the member states. That we see that it's important dimension here. When it comes to social networks and the protection of minors, this is something that we are already addressing our Digital Services Act, because it says very clearly that when minors are using online services, a very high level of safety, security and privacy has to be ensured for the minors. But we see that many of the online platforms, they are not taking their responsibilities here. And that's why Commission has opened formal investigations against some of the very big online platforms like Facebook, Instagram and TikTok, especially about this, that how they are taking their responsibilities to protect the minors. And really now in last week we were publishing our guidelines also for the online platforms, because this is said in Article 28 that the high level of privacy, security and safety has to be ensured. And now we were proposing guidelines also for that, for online platforms, where we are clearly also showing for them that what kind of practices we are expecting from online platforms to comply with our rules. It's very much, of course, about the screen time. We know that many of the parents and families are worried that the kids are using too much time online. Now, this is, of course, something that we as parents, we should also take our responsibility and look at, but it's also the online services that they shouldn't have too addictive design. So we are also looking at these practices, what they have, that they shouldn't keep the minors and the users too much online. And then also, we are looking at what kind of design there is on online services, because we see that there should be like safety by design, that for example strange adults can't be in contact with minors, for example, by an online platform, and always when the minors are having account on online service, it should be set as a private by default, always, that they are not sharing by accident their information, or with who are their friends, or what kind of content they like. Nobody shouldn't see that without their permission. So that kind of guidelines we are now giving to online services here. But of course, when it comes now to minimum age, we don't have, in the European legislation, we don't have minimum age for online services, and this is a very challenging question, because now we see also that digital world is an important part of our everyday life, and also minors, also our children, they have also children's rights, like access to information, right to participate, right to educate, and digital world is important part of that. But in the same time, I think we have to find right balance, that the online services, they have to take their responsibilities, and they have to use like a design by safety by design system more. And we as a parents, of course, and society has to also take our responsibility. But then we also have to look at what kind of services, when there is more higher risk for kids, they have to use also more tools to also verify the age of the user. And it's for sure that, for example, gaming industry, also when the services are selling to cigarettes or alcohol, or if there is some pornographic content, that kind of services, they have to verify the age of the user. And they are not doing it, all of them, so that's why we also opened investigations against these porn platforms now in May, because they should verify the age of the users, and all of them are not doing that. So now we are going to continue to work with the member states also, and look the different cultures and positions of the member states when it comes to age verification. And this is a priority for the Danish presidency now on digital field, and there will be also an informal ministerial council about this topic in October, to look the positions of different member states when it comes to age verification. But I think in the same time it's important that we are educating digital citizens, and in the same time we have to make sure that the online environment is safe also for our kids, and here many stakeholders has to do their parts. Many questions about our relations to USA, and also how we can build up our sovereignty and how we can close the innovation gap. Of course, the main tool for us is to make sure that Europe is interesting place for investors and innovations, and especially now we are focusing very much to our scale-ups, because I think it's quite interesting to see that Europe is very strong when we look at research of technology, and also when we look at the amount of startups. Often more startups are created in the European Union annually than in USA. But then when we look scale-ups, we have only 8% in the European Union and 60% in North America. And it tells that it's still very difficult to scale up the businesses in the European Union. And here we have to really look to access to finance. This is something that we are now working very much together with member states, to make sure that our startups, they have access to venture capital, that they have access to finance, and also access to markets, because often we have too much obstacles between the member states, and we are too fragmented. So we have to work now in this field to make sure that we are also accelerating more the scale-ups in the European Union, because we have very strong startup scene. And also something what I see that we have to use more when it comes to technologies, we have to use more public procurement. Also when we are buying as a governments, European Commission, municipalities, region, when we are buying ICT services, we should also look at how we can boost new innovations also. We have already many European alternatives. For example, satellites was mentioned here. We have also very high level of satellite companies also in European Union, but often they are not so visible. So we have to also look at how we can also more spread the information about these European alternatives, what we have in the markets, because I think that it's important for innovations and for competition also, that we are also boosting new innovations all the time, and we are looking also our public procurement part. Now, Mr. Chair, I have to ask that am I still in my time limit, because I still have several questions. Can I continue? Yes, very good. Unfortunately.
Prego. Prego.
Yes, of course, you go ahead. You go ahead.
Because I think you had very good and important topics, and I have still many answers here on the table. Our infrastructure was mentioned here, that should we focus and prioritize more our infrastructure, and I see very much that this is very important phases for all our competitiveness, of course, for our single market and also for our security, that we have very good and smart modern connections when it comes to transport, energy, and also digital connections, and also cross-border infrastructure. So I think that this is very important and should be very important priority for us. So, and also in the future, in the forthcoming MFF, we were also allocating a lot of funding for these infrastructure projects, because we see that these are a very important part of our security and competitiveness and our single market, that we have very good connections. But especially then when it comes to preparedness, I think it's also very important that we are also building very resilient infrastructures when it comes to digital and transport and energy. And maybe I'm jumping to the last question also in this in same time, when it was asked about the high-risk vendors in our infrastructures. This is something that we are now looking very much to make sure that we don't have high-risk vendors in our critical infrastructures. We know that during the last years we have been focusing very much to our 5G networks. We still have high-risk vendors in our 5G networks, so we are working with the member states to make sure that we have safe networks in the future. But now we are also looking more broadly our whole ICT infrastructure, also our cables, and also some transport connections like ports, for example, our connected cars, for example, and also in the energy sector there's also work going on when it comes to our solar energy, to our wind power, also to look the resilience and the security of our supply chains there. So this is something that is very high priorities now for the European Commission, and in our internal security strategy, where we are stating that always now when we make new initiatives, we will always look also the security aspect. So we can't be too naive here. We know that the world is much more challenging than it used to be, and we have to also look our economic security, but also our physical security, cyber security always when we speak about our infrastructure. Also yesterday when we published our next multi-annual financial framework, we also made it very clear that in the future in the European Union funding, we are not funding high-risk vendors, not in the European Union when we are funding different infrastructures, and also outside when we are investing via global gateway to the third countries and supporting them. So we are just supporting trusted vendors there when it comes to our infrastructure. So this is very important priority. And also we have to look now the preparedness, of course, very carefully, because we have really seen many incidents. There has been sabotage against our critical infrastructure, but also cyber attacks. But sometimes it can be also some kind of natural disaster, for example, because of climate change. We have to be prepared also that our infrastructure and energy system connections, they are able, transportation, to operate in all circumstances. And then it was asked also about the disinformation and hybrid threats we are facing and how to protect better. We are currently now working in so-called democracy shield, where we are trying to give also more tools for the member states to protect their democracies. Maybe I would focus to three fields what I see that are very important here. First of all, our role of our media and quality journalism. journalism. We see that our media in the European Union is very much under pressure now because of the economic situation. The people are not buying newspapers like they used to do, and the advertisement is very much on digital online platforms. So our traditional media is having very big challenges when it comes to funding and economic situation, and we are very much looking now at how we can make sure that we have enough also economic possibilities to quality journalism, to free and independent media in our member states, because we see that it's a cornerstone of our democracies, that our citizens, they have access to quality journalism and information. Then the second part is the media literacy and digital literacy of our citizens, because we see that in nowadays when there's so much different fake news and disinformation, it's very important that we are building up the capacity and knowledge and resilience of our citizens, not only for our kids and children, but also for people in all ages. Also for the older generation, it's important to have digital skills and literacy, because many of the services are nowadays digitalized. So to have access to services, digital services, but also to follow the information on digital environment, and also to be able critically analyze and think the things what we see on online world. And then the third part is, of course, the online platforms, that they have to also take their responsibilities. In our Digital Services Act, we are very clearly saying that the online services, they have to all the time, they have to assess and mitigate the systematic risks they are posing. For example, for our democratic systems, to our electoral processes, for people's well-being, for civic discourse, and they have to have also practices in place how they are, for example, making sure that they are not spreading disinformation. And there they can use different tools. They can have fact checkers. For example, Meta is having fact checkers in the European Union who is flagging content for them, and then Meta is checking what to do with it. And X is using community note systems that the users are flagging the content and so on. So there's different practices what they are using, but they have to have practice in the place that they are making sure also that they are not spreading fake news or disinformation. So there's many areas where we are working, but this is very challenging area as we see, because European Union is very much under attack, and our democracy is here. Then there was also questions about organized crime, and it is true that in the same time when we have to be prepared for many kind of new threats, also we have these traditional threats like organized crime and terrorism, and we have to also look at how we are tackling these challenges. But I have to say that now when the whole world is so digitalized, one challenge for us is that we have been losing very much ground, and our police and our investigators, because we don't have very good legal access to data. And most of the criminal activities, they are taking a place, they are using digital platforms. And we have to work now together with the member states to make sure, it was also asked by the chair, the data part, I think it's crucial that we have also legal opportunities for our investigators, for our law enforcement to access to data. Because when it comes to crimes, about 80% of all crimes, they are also using digital tools. And now we don't really have good access also to investigate these crimes. So it's something that we are lagging behind, and we are very closely working with the Commissioner of Internal Security, Commissioner Brunner, in this topic. Have I now spoken too long, or can I still have... I'm still answering, yes, maybe to two more questions. There was very much questions, I have to say, and very important topics you were raising. About the Recovery and Resilience Fund and how to make sure that it's used efficiently. This is something that now I think it's important that we from the Commission side, that we are now supporting member states in this and accelerating really the processes. But especially when it comes to digital part, we can see when we are looking including the digital decade targets, that Italy has been progressing very well. So we see that Recovery and Resilience Fund part, what has been used to digitalization, for example, it has been very effective in Italy. We see that the connectivity and also the use of technologies in the industry, it has been progressing very well. And I think that now we are supporting the member states that we are using the RRF very smartly and efficient way also to the best of Europe and for your citizens. And just very shortly, in the end, about investments, that are we investing enough to AI and technologies? With our new proposal for multi-annual financial framework, we were very much following Professor Draghi recommendations, really to build up that kind of competitiveness fund from where we can invest to new technologies, taking care of research, also investing to clean technologies, to AI, quantum computing, where Italy is also very strong, so you are adopting also your quantum strategy in the coming days. And we see that it's important that we have also flexible tools to invest to those technologies. But of course, with the European budget, we can't solve everything. So it's also very important that we are creating that kind of environment in the European Union, that we are also encouraging the companies to invest in the European Union, and we are simplifying the regulation and rules for them, and also accelerating the permitting processes and different authorization processes, which are often very lengthy. And how we are now looking at what is the timeline, I think when it comes to technologies and digitalization, for us it's very important to look our digital decades targets, because we have set the targets to 2030 where we should be when it comes to technologies and digitalization, and we are now currently reviewing these targets. So we are looking how the technology has been developing, should we have new targets, should we change and modify something, but this is very much now the way how we are measuring where we are with the technological competitiveness, the digital decade targets. And I'm also very much encouraging you to take a part together with your ministry to that exercise and to review these targets, because I know that under the Danish presidency, the digital ministers, they are planning to have council conclusions in December on this, the digital decade targets. So now it's the right time also to act and look them at how we should modify them, and look that we are also on track when it comes to technological competitiveness. And just last remark about cybersecurity and DORA. We know that there's many different sectors where they have their own legislations like DORA also, and we are trying now also to simplify the rules, because often it's the same companies that they have to comply with our cybersecurity rules, with DORA also, to simplify also this from their perspective. And we will propose our Cybersecurity Act during the autumn, and there we are simplifying the processes together with our digital omnibus also later in autumn.
Bene.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Madam Vice President Virkkunen. You have really replied to all the questions that have been submitted to her. Thank you very much for that. That means that you are really passionate about your remit, your mandate. Congratulations. To us, the role of the European Commission is extremely important, also when it comes to national parliaments. Of course, we are living in challenging times. You have spoken about the Russia-Ukraine conflict. Your country, Finland, for instance, is one of the countries one of Russia's neighboring countries. So we very much understand the sensitivity with which you have taken up this role within the European Commission. So I would like to thank Vice President Virkkunen for being here at the Chamber of Deputies of the Italian Parliament. I would like to thank all MPs. Some of them have just arrived. A friend of mine, Sigismondi, who is from the same region as me. I would like to thank all the MPs and all those who have been here. I declare this session closed. Thank you.